achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we're breaking down the upcoming October 19th UFC 166 event, which will take place live from the Toyota Center in Houston, Texas. It will feature Cain Velasquez defending his title in the trilogy fight against Junior Dos Santos, the former champion, the man he took the title from, that originally took the title from him. It's been a great series of fights so far, and we'll break that matchup down for you. I'm coming off a respectable 6-4 night at UFC Fight Night 29, and the reason I say it's respectable is considering there was a 10-fight card, there were 6 upsets. I nailed some significant ones, including Chris Carriazo, Rafael Sunsao, and Dong Young Kim picking up victories. And for me, and my bet packs cashed in big. I think they were over $1,200 in winnings. Had Joey Beltran won the split decision, I felt he did enough to beat Fabio Maldonado. It would have put it up over 3,000, so certainly it was a close night. It was very close to being a fantastic night, but still a very good night overall. My bet packs will be available. Also, the Kamikaze Overdrive Prediction Tournament. This is event number 2 of the Tournament Championship, so please check out their predictions, which I will post right before the event starts. 2 very good predictors representing the United States and Canada, so please check them out. Also, Josh Harper will have his predictions posted on the website. Lots of good fight action to get into on this card, both preliminary and main card. My preliminary picks, as always, at kamikazeoverdrive.net. And let's get into our opening fight of the night. We kick things off in the UFC's flyweight division's former title challenger, Ultimate Fighter champion, and number 2 ranked 125-pounder John the Magician Dodson, with a record of 15-6-0, battles newcomer and top-ranked flyweight prospect Darrell Montague, 13-2-0. Dodson's last appearance was for the title, losing Demetrius Johnson back in January. So Montague, as I said, he's one of the top-ranked prospects now in the UFC, finally making his promotional debut. He is a former bantamweight, and he comes in with a 3-inch height advantage, which is usually the case when John Dodson is in action. He's that wrestler-boxer-style fighter, so that's something to keep an eye on. He's good with his wrestling. He has decent hands, but he's best when he can work them in combination. As I said, he has decent hands, but he needs to be able to use that wrestling aspect to be at his best, or else he's a little bit not nearly as effective, a little bit one-dimensional if he can't mix things up. He is coming off a big win over Marumu Yamaguchi, and that arguably got him the spot in the UFC. The winner of that was pretty much going to get a call from the big promotion, so he's coming in with some momentum. Overall, he has even numbers as far as subs and knockouts at 5 apiece and 3 wins by decision. He has 1 knockout loss and 1 sub loss on his record, and that submission loss came to Ian McCall. So he's fought some high-level competition. He had trouble with McCall's movement in that matchup. He was following him a lot instead of cutting off the cage, and that's something to keep an eye on against a guy with John Dodson's foot speed. He was also taken down by McCall with a quick shot, but he got up fairly quickly. Overall, too, I thought I noticed him slowing down in the later stages of that fight, but still not. He wasn't gassing out by any stretch of the imagination. For John Dodson, he has some significant power in his hands, 6 wins by knockout, including UFC wins over Jussier Fomenga and TJ Dillashaw, who fights at bantamweight, and he's very fast both with his hands and feet, and that gives people a lot of trouble. He has some good kicks as well and knees, and he can counter-strike with quite a good amount of effectiveness. Now, he had some trouble with Tim Elliott's unorthodox attack, but you have to consider there he had a broken hand, and that's it was his first fight at flyweight, which was certainly a change for him. He isn't quite as effective when he's forced to move backwards, but he still can get the job done. But either way, he's better when he can go forward and use that speed. He has excellent takedown defense, and that'll be put to the test here. 80% overall, but he was taken down 5 times by Demetrius Johnson, who's the champ and one of the best fighters in the world. But at the same time, he shut down Jussier Fomenga, who was looking to put him on his back, and completely took that fight out of the equation. Doesn't use a lot of takedowns himself. Averages under 1 a fight, but still can use his wrestling if he wants to. And we saw that power, and we saw what he was capable of when he hurt Demetrius Johnson a couple of times. And he was looking good in that fight until he gassed in the later rounds. But for me, that was a great experience, a learning experience, and I expect to see Dodson that much better coming into this. He's 6-6 overall in decisions, which are a little bit of a concern if he can't put his opponent away. But he has won his last 3 overall that have gone the distance. And he's learning how to outwork his opponents and use his speed. And if he can't knock him out, still to make sure he gets the victory. 5 straight wins for the Dodson prior to the Johnson fight. So I'm expecting him to and he always seems to rebound well from defeat. I'm expecting that here as well. He's coming off a 9-month layoff, which could have an impact, but it's a debut for Montague, which should cancel each other out as far as impacts on the fighters. Dodson, he's a very tough fighter when you combine that speed and that power, and that's what I think his edge is going to be here. Montague, he needs to find a way to work his wrestling in. I don't think he'll be able to. So my prediction is John Dodson to defeat Darrell Montague, and I'll take Dodson by decision. For our next prediction, we move from one extreme to the next as we go all the way up to the heavyweights, the 265-pounders, as Gabriel Gonzaga, the former UFC title challenger, with a record of 15-7-0, battles Greg Jackson product Shawn the Savage Jordan with a record of 15-4-0. Coming into this bout, Gabe, physically, he's 2 inches taller and he's going to have a half-inch reach advantage, but Jordan's going to outweigh him by 15 to 20 pounds, so he's the more stockier fighter, but Gabe has a little bit of reach and a little bit of height on him. Now, Gabriel Gonzaga has struggled for the most part with next-level opponents, looking at guys like Fabricio Verdum, Randy Couture, Shane Carwin, Junior Dos Santos, Travis Brown, and even Brendan Schaub, who's on the lower level of that quote-unquote next level. So the big question is Shawn Jordan there yet? This fight should prove it one way or another. For Jordan, he's still working to round out his game. He's relatively inexperienced. He doesn't have a combat sports background for the most part, coming out of college football, but you can see him improving with every single fight. Overall, both guys have some chin issues, which is a major concern. Gonzaga 6 knockouts on his career, while Shawn Jordan 2, and we've seen a couple fights where he's got tagged with some big shots, and certainly it has hurt him. On the other side of the scale, both guys have big knockout power. Gonzaga 6 KOs overall, including that 17-second bashing of Dave Herman in his last fight, and his head kick highlight reel over Mirko Cro Cop. Well, Jordan 11 wins by knockout, including his big, quick KO of Pat Barry. He stopped Mike Russell by TKO and also holds a UFC victory over Ole Thompson by knockout. Now, Gabriel Gonzaga, he's capable on the feet, but he has returned his focus to grappling, and that's part of the reason he's had so much success since returning to the UFC. Jordan, on the other hand, decent hands and power, but he's very athletic for a big man, and he's quick, and that surprises a lot of people when he's able to cover distance. He likes to come forward with an aggressive style, looking to blast opponents, but he needs to set up his attacks because against a better striker who can counter him or see him coming and stick some shots in there before he even starts attacking, that's going to be a major concern. Now, Jordan, I think his striking defense is a major concern as well. We saw against Ole Thompson, he was getting hit a lot. He was standing and trading. Mike Russell was using some quick punches to slice right through Jordan's defensive guard and do some damage and had him in trouble early. Statistically, Jordan lands about 3.19 strikes per minute versus 3.31 strikes absorbed per minute, so he's getting hit more than he hits. And when you're a guy who's relying on their striking so much, that's not a good recipe, especially at heavyweight. Now, for Gabriel Gonzaga, his numbers are even worse. 2.36 strikes landed per minute against 3.17 strikes absorbed per minute. And for the most part, when Gabe stands with his opponents, he usually gets outstruck and he usually gets knocked out. But when Gonzaga grapples, he limits his opponent's outputs. Over his last 8 victories, his opponents have landed strikes of the following totals: 3, 12, 0, 0, 1, 2, 1, and 1, totaling 20 strikes. So he really can take his opponent's striking capabilities out of a fight with his grappling. And speaking of his grappling, statistically, takedowns, he averages 3.37. Takedowns at 49%. He's a 4th-degree BJJ black belt with 9 wins by submission, 4 in the UFC. He has a heavy double leg, really can get down and get deep on guys and put them on their backside. We saw him break down Ben Rothwell with his grappling attack, and he's very hard to defend against because he is so strong. Jordan, 77% takedown defense, which is a good number, and he will use takedowns himself, but that won't be advised against Gonzaga because that plays right into his realm. I expect he's going to try and fight at close range, but that brings him into the danger zone as well. Now, he's had trouble in the past grappling with fighters like Congo and Mike Russo, who early on had him in trouble. And in the Russo fight, he was in all sorts of trouble until Russo gassed out. Congo was able to neutralize him along the wall and on the mat. And for the most part, Jordan is a work in progress off his back, something that Greg Jackson's working to improve upon, but still not quite there yet. The endurance should favor Jordan. If he can defend early like he did against Russo, he could capitalize on that later in the fight. Jordan's hands, I expect they're going to be a little bit lower in defense of the takedown, anticipating that shot, and that's going to create openings for Gabriel Gonzaga to land some big punches on the feet or when he's looking to attack. Gonzaga has to be cognizant of getting tagged while moving forward for the takedown because one shot from Jordan can put his lights out. I think he will be aware of that. Gonzaga should be able to dominate on the mat once he gets it there, and I expect he'll be able to capitalize on early opportunities against Shawn Jordan, who's inexperienced on the ground. So my prediction is Gabriel Gonzaga in an upset to defeat Shawn Jordan. I'll take him by submission. We're clicking right along as we move to the lightweight divisions. The number 2 ranked lightweight in the UFC and former Strikeforce lightweight champion Gilbert El Nino Melendez, 21-3-0, battles Diego, the dream or the nightmare, depending on what day of the week it is, Sanchez, 26-5-0. Sanchez returning to the lightweight division in his last fight against Takanori Gomi, while Gilbert debuted with a title fight loss against Benson Henderson. Now, this is Sanchez, as I said, it's the second fight back at 155. Actually, technically, it's his first, considering he missed weight by 3 pounds against Gomi. So we'll have to see if he has any weight-cutting condition or issues. Melendez, this is his first non-title fight since late 2007, which encompassed 10 fights. So it'll be interesting to see how he fares over a 3-round matchup. Physically, slight edges to Diego, the former welterweight, but they're minimal, and really I don't think it'll play that big of a factor. Now, Diego has not seemed like the same fighter of late. The same guy that went to war with Clay Guida. He seemed very much off his game against Takanori Gomi. That could be, his age, damage taken. Maybe it's the Greg Jackson more conservative game plan impacting his style, but he's just not nearly as effective a fighter as we tend to see out of the explosive Sanchez. Now, Diego, he's a BJJ black belt, and he's taking on Melendez, who's a brown belt. And I think this could be the greatest advantage for Diego if he can put himself in a position to use it. But can he out-wrestle Melendez? I don't know if he can or not. Diego, 1.78 takedowns at 22%, not great numbers, but he will rely on his wrestling, and he struggled against Takanori Gomi to find the timing on his shot and to get in and put that fight in the ground. And that was a major issue for what I thought he lost. Clearly, the judges disagree with me. Gilbert, on the other hand, 72% takedown defense. He hasn't been taken down more than twice in a bout since his 2008 loss to Josh Thompson. And when he wins the takedown battle in his career, he's 7-1, which is very impressive. If Diego can get this fight to the ground, he could set up his grappling attack and take advantage of that advantage with his BJJ, but that's a big if. The combo I expect of Melendez's takedown D and Sanchez's recent struggles make takedowns with regularity for Sanchez seem very unlikely. Now, on the feet, Diego, 2.83 strikes landed per minute versus Gilbert outworks him a little bit at 3.08. But again, since the BJ Penn fight, Diego has been outlanded in 5 of his 6 fights. He's not nearly as aggressive as he used to be, and that could be a major issue here. He struggled with the jab of Takanori Gomi, and he appeared to back off with the power of BJ Penn. So if he can't get in and land, he really has some major issues, calibrating and figuring out a new game plan. Now, Melendez, he's capable of brawling with guys, but he showed a much more calculated striking approach versus Benson Henderson, and he was effective despite losing that fight. He has big power in his hands with 11 wins by knockout. He has an excellent chin. He did get dropped by Josh Thompson in a fight, but he's never been actually stopped in his career. He has good hands, decent kicks. Overall, he's a very capable striker. Now, Diego, again, he's most effective when he comes forward aggressively, but it also leaves him open to being countered, especially against a guy like Melendez, who will circle away, reset, and look for those openings. Diego has a good chin, just a single TKO loss, which was against BJ Penn due to some major damage and cuts, but actually not knocked out. Melendez, for me, is just better in every single area against Sanchez, other than maybe the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I don't think that's going to be a factor in this fight. Look for Gilbert Melendez to land with power early on and keep Diego backing up, maybe mixing the wrestling, put Diego on his back, and my prediction is Gilbert Melendez to defeat Diego Sanchez by decision. Co-main event time, and we're back to the heavies as the Strikeforce Grand Prix tournament winner and number 2 ranked UFC heavyweight Daniel D.C. Cormier, 12-0 with an undefeated record, battles Ultimate Fighter champion and number 9 ranked Roy Big Country Nelson with a record of 20 wins and 8 losses. Now, these guys are 2 smaller heavyweights, if you can call them that. Nelson will have a weight advantage, but he's slimming down, and Cormier's focusing on that too, as both have talked about moving to 205, especially Cormier, and Nelson's also considering a drop, and a potential shot at the title is on the line for Daniel Cormier against John Jones if he can get the win. Nelson feeling if he beats Cormier, he should get that title shot. Is Cormier looking past Roy Nelson to a possible shot at Jones? That's a big question here. I think he needs to be more focused for his sophomore UFC fight because I don't think he was satisfied with his debut performance, as most people were not. Now, Nelson's coming off an upset loss that cost him almost all of his heavyweight momentum. Should he beat Cormier, he's right back in the mix, but that loss to Stipe Miocic, a loss that I predicted, was certainly devastating. Now, Nelson's style of taking damage to give damage is... his striking is simple, and you look at the numbers, 2.28 strikes landed per minute versus 5.09 strikes absorbed per minute. That's a big disparity and not in Nelson's favor. And against guys that can hit hard like Cormier, that could come back to cost him. It only works, for the most part, if he can land that big fight-changing shot. He did not land it against Stipe. He did it against guys like Stefan Struve, Dave Herman, and Brendan Schaub, but when he can't do it, it really costs him. Nelson overall 2-7 in fights that go to decision, 0-5 in his last 5 fights overall, and 4 of those coming in the UFC. Now, his UFC decision losses have come to more diverse strikers that were able to avoid taking that big shot, as I mentioned, Miocic, also Fabricio Verdum, Junior Dos Santos, and the very chinny Frank Mir. Now, Nelson's speed, both foot and hand, will be a huge, Nelson's speed, Cormier's speed, both foot and hand, will be a huge advantage, and he has a very good ratio. Strikes landed per minute, 3.87 versus strikes absorbed per minute, 1.38. 3-9. He puts damage on his opponents and he limits what they can land. Now, Roy, he's a BJJ black belt and he's very good at controlling his opponents along the cage, but he doesn't have that elite level ground game where he can put guys on their backs. And considering that Daniel Cormier is a former Olympic wrestler with 100% takedown defense, I don't see Nelson putting Cormier on his back unless he hurts him with a big shot. I expect Cormier to shut down any threat of the grappling. He did it against Frank Mir, against Josh Barnett, and against Jeff Munson. I don't think Nelson's going to have much success there either. Now, Cormier, for a guy with takedown capabilities, only 1.92 takedowns at 41%, but he can dominate fights with his wrestling. We saw him do it against Josh Barnett, putting him on his back with ease on 4 occasions, and really, it can be very discouraging with how easy this man can do it with his wrestling. Now, Nelson has taken a ton of damage in his career, and he's absorbed it, but he was hurt by Milicic, he was hurt by Fabricio Verdum, and you have to wonder when he's going to eventually get put away by a big hitter. He was outworked and TKO'd by Andrei Arlovski in kind of a controversial fashion, but still, Andrei Arlovski did hurt him. The week, as I said, the question is, when will Nelson's chin crack? And I think it will eventually be, I don't know if it's going to be against Cormier, but it's going to happen. We're going to be all stunned when it does, but we know it's coming. Cormier's probably going to nullify the close-range attack of Nelson with his wrestling and his footwork and his movement. And I expect Cormier to outland him. He's going to have superior striking. He will do more damage, and my prediction is Daniel Cormier to defeat Roy Nelson. I'll take Cormier by decision. Main event prediction time, featuring the UFC's heavyweight title as the current reigning second Tour of Duty champion, Cain Velasquez, 12-1-0, the baddest man on the planet, takes on the former champion, the man he took the title from, the number 1 ranked junior, Cigano dos Santos, 16-2-0. Now, taking a look at this fight, this is the trilogy fight, and we know that Cain can out-wrestle Junior dos Santos. We saw that in the last matchup, and we know in the first fight that Junior dos Santos, with one big punch, can knock Cain on his backside and put him away with a knockout and can do it with one shot. So both guys are capable of doing what they do best. So far, and I have no problem admitting it, I'm 0-2 picking these fights. I picked the wrong guy in both matchups, which is disappointing, but it's just nature of the business. First, I took Cain in the original match on the basis of his wrestling, superior cardio, and big leg kicks to keep Junior dos Santos out of boxing distance. Of course, none of that came to fruition, and a lot of it had to do with the potential that Cain was not 100% coming off an injury, so, that certainly is an argument there. In the second matchup, I took Junior dos Santos on the basis of takedown defense, knockout power, and the ability to attack the body to set up the big right hand or the counter off the kick like he did against both Frank Mir and in the original fight against Velasquez. Again, that didn't play out either, as Cain hurt him early, got on with the wrestling, broke his cardio. Now, Junior claimed he overtrained in that second fight, and that's what cost him. We'll have to see if that, there's any truth to that, and if we see that play out in the third fight. Now, he was able to defend the takedowns early, but he just could not keep up the pace that Cain kept coming at. Cain didn't look great shooting for takedowns and missing and whiffing, but it proved effective and it got him the job done. I also think Junior was a little bit overconfident going into that fight, and I think that played a role as well. And additionally, Junior was forced to hold his hands very low in the defense of the takedowns, and Cain landed some big shots, despite what JDS said, that he hits like a girl. You could still see they clearly, by the look on Junior's face, they were taking their toll. Now, Cain's hands are improving, but I think they're aided again by his opponent's continued focus on defending the wrestling. They know if they get too focused on striking, he's just going to shoot the double leg or shoot the single, put them on their back, and really pound away, and that keeps them thinking about multiple things. They're not nearly as effective when they can't focus on just the striking aspect of the matchup. Now, Junior Santos, he looked better against Marquardt, and he showed he can win a dirty dogfight where both guys land some big shots, but Marquardt, as much as we love him, he's very one-dimensional. Junior knows exactly what he needed to prepare for, and that's striking against Cain. He's multifaceted, not nearly the same fighter as Marquardt. Now, JDS, he has to land shots early in this fight. He has to get Cain's respect, he has to hurt him, and he has to maintain distance with his movement and his jab. He cannot allow Cain to get inside, and at the same time, we saw what Cain can do by just pressuring and forcing Junior to work. Junior has to fight this fight at his pace, land big shots, and I won't go as far as he has to knock him out immediately, but he has to hurt him, and he has to, he can't allow this fight to go deep into the matchup. Cain, for him, he has to execute his wrestling attack like he did in the last fight. He has to push JDS, work that cardio, make him work hard to stay up, make him focus on defending the takedowns and not attacking, not being offensive. But at the same time, Cain, we saw him, of course, he got knocked out by Junior. We saw him get hurt a couple times against Czech Congo. He cannot afford to open up too much and get tagged with big shots and get countered and get hurt. Now, both men have signature wins over the other, so it's not like either guy has an advantage coming in. I guess if you look at it this way, the advantage would be with Cain simply because he's got the most recent victory, and it was an absolute dominant win, even though Junior's would be considered a dominant win as well for knocking him out in the first round. I consider the 5-round performance by Cain that much more impressive. Junior's win, to me, looked more like a puncher's chance, and the big question is, can he neutralize that wrestling? I haven't seen anybody neutralize Cain's wrestling and shut it down yet without, of course, Junior knocking him out. Cain, he just has to avoid getting tagged, especially early on, and he can do that with exactly what he does every time, that's wrestle. Put guys on their back. I think he has the ability to do that again. This is the long... and one thing I look at here, long-awaited rematches. from fights that were long fights like the last one often end very quickly the next time we see them. We'll see if that plays out. For example, Pettis-Henderson, we just saw a 5-round beauty in the first fight. The second fight ends inside the first round. We'll see if that plays out here. My prediction, though, is Cain Velasquez to retain his title. I'm going to take him by TKO. I think he breaks Junior down. I think he finishes the job this time. Could be as late as the third or fourth round, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happened in the first or even second round. But again, I'm 0-2 picking these fights, but I'm going to go with Cain Velasquez to retain his title by TKO and start setting up some new matchups as far as the heavyweight title is concerned. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC 166. All of my preliminary picks will be available on the website, kamikazeoverdrive.net. Also, Josh Harper's predictions will be available on the website as well. And he's been on fire of late. He slipped up a little bit at UFC Fight Night 29, but his Bellator picks and his UFC picks have been fantastic. I tip my hat to his prediction capabilities. He's very impressive and very knowledgeable in the sport. So please check out his predictions. Also available will be the Kamikaze Overdrive Prediction Tournament finalists. They'll be competing in event number 2 of 4 for the championship. So check out their post, which will be available a couple hours before the fight start. The bet packs have been on fire. I think I've cashed with all my predictions, all my upset picks on every single card the last 4 or 5 since I made the changes. I've cashed every single time with the exception of one, so please invest there for just $10. And the public picks, also make your votes. Check out some of the statistics and the trends. We've got a lot to offer at kamikazeoverdrive.net, and we really enjoy doing the best we possibly can to give you the insight you need to make each night a profitable night, an enjoyable and a knowledgeable night. As always, thank you very much for listening. Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions.